What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another chance encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon. I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close. What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with Kathy, and because of painting, I'm not confident enough to start with a J. I assume it's supposed to be Jang, but I'm not sure. So,
Yeah, Jang is fine. We do the Americanized version.
oh wow, yeah, I do. But anyways, before we get too excited, what's going on here? This is a chance encounter, and that's where I interview commercial real estate investors. Why do I do that? Well, commercial real estate investors need to know as many of each other as humanly possible, really. And the other thing, too, is if you do any 506B syndications, you don't have a choice. You do have to get to know people. So I quickly go through the 5 different distinct motivations I found that commercial real estate investors have, and I ask my guests, well, which one of them's you? Then I go through the Dan Does Deals commercial roll die with the 6 different roles in a commercial deal. I go through them in detail and I say, hey, which one of these is your core competency? And if you want your own copy of this dandoesdeals.com die, you can go to dandoesdeals.com and download it and print it out for free. I don't even ask for your email address, which is a really, really bad idea as far as marketing goes, but I want you to be able to effectively communicate on the subject of commercial real estate. So before we get too far ahead of each other, Kathy, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, absolutely. So I am a full-time real estate professional, live in Phoenix, Arizona. That's where I syndicate, as well as in Kansas City. And I've been doing this for quite a few years now, and I'm happy to help people on their journey to passive income.
Sweet, sweet. So let's get on to the motivation piece. I usually start off with the motivation piece because sometimes I interview beginners. And now that I'm all backlit, I'll turn on my ring light finally. So the motivations, the first one, it's not my one, but it is fairly common. Preserving your purchasing power. If you have a family office or if you rely on the cash flow that comes from your assets to make ends meet, then the reason you're making your next acquisition is to stave off inflation, because inflation is really the only thing that will ruin the party. That's not my main motivation. My one is trading time directly for wealth. I've got a background in technology. Specifically, I was working for a CRM company, and then I made an agency helping people with CRMs. That's mass marketing, emailing a whole whack of people, and all the online sales and all that kind of stuff. But the problem with having a nice cushy job is you're paying more in income tax than any other kind of income. And so it hit me. It's like, well, why don't I pivot so that I'm taking advantage of accumulating equity, which has the better tax advantages. So that is what I'm up to with this whole thing. But the most frequent answer for why people want to be involved in commercial real estate and make their next acquisition is that they want to fast track their retirement. More specifically, they want to gain more control of their time in some way. So maybe they only want to work, fewer months per year. Maybe it's fewer weeks per month. Maybe it's fewer hours per week. Maybe they actually do just want to retire. Maybe they're going to become an accredited investor and then retire someplace with a low cost of living. But no matter what, they're going to be winding it down, as opposed to the next 2 groups. The next one, they are so ambitious. They're going to be hustling in their 90s. They're probably looking for generational wealth, making sure that their great grandchildren never have to get a day job, that sort of thing. They're great to have on the team because they're going to keep on hustling. But the last motivation I found is sometimes people pick a sector of society. I suppose your family's still a sector of society, but maybe it's a little bit bigger than that. But the idea is the people who choose this last one, They've found that wealth is by far the most effective vehicle in making a real impact. And maybe it's the environment, maybe it's something else, like animals or a particular group of people. But really, the reason why they're doing this is to make that impact. So, of those five, Kathy, what combination of them describes you best or resonates with you best?
Yeah, the retirement piece resonates the most, but all of them actually are, I think, incredibly applicable and absolutely see different aspects of that and everything that I work towards. But for my husband and I, we have two young kids, a 7 and 9-year-old right now. And, we just moved to Phoenix more recently. We were in the Bay Area, California. And as you can imagine, we were really burning the midnight oil. We were working just day and night and, really not finding any time for our family. And so we didn't want to continue doing that until we were 65 and, finally able to retire. We needed to fast track that as quickly as we could. And that's where passive income really came in. Yes, I'm actually retired, quote unquote, retired from the rat race, the W-2 job. And I left it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, actually, because my passive income was able to replace my W-2 income. And so, yeah, although I'm a syndicator now and I'm active as a real estate syndicator, and still working quite hard, I'm able to create my own schedule, one which allows me to be present with my kids, to volunteer at their school, take them to the soccer or karate or whatever it might be. And it's usually like, in the middle of afternoon, which I absolutely could not do if I was in a W-2 job. And so, with passive income, I'm able to design a life that makes sense for my family and that is more fulfilling for me. And yes, I still work incredibly hard, but it's kind of on my terms, and that's what I love about what we do.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
let's get into some specifics then. You already mentioned some of the things that you do, but I like to make sure that you and the audience can communicate effectively on the topic of commercial real estate. So let's talk about what a repositioner is, because that's where in a lot of people's minds it all begins. A repositioner is an acquisitions person. So they're looking at a bunch of different properties saying, hey, we need to add more to our portfolio. And when they're looking at these properties and all this paperwork, what are they going to do? Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to do the math, which is called underwriting. Okay. They're looking at the deal. They're saying, okay, is this seller telling the truth? Is the property actually making the amount that they say it is? But the repositioning part of being a repositioner is finding some way to make some changes so that there's some upside, basically, so the property makes more than it is right at that moment. And the first way that a repositioner can get upside is through more efficient operations. They stop those Benjamins from going down the toilet, but there's more to operations than just collecting rent and mowing lawns and unclogging toilets and all that sort of fun stuff. There's also the marketing component, which is one of my fortes that I bring to several different groups. And that means that the vacancy rate ends up staying low. And there are other things you can do with programming skills and all that sort of stuff to make sure that everything's streamlined. But operations is probably not enough for most repositioners to be comfortable with the amount of upside. So the frequent solution is they get a contractor team and they do a value add. In other words, they do the renovations, they make the place nicer. And then that way people will pay more in rent and they'll do it with a smile on their face. So that is that's the other way that they end up getting the upside. But if you're like me and you're from the internet, you're not going to be able to make sure that the contractors are keeping to time. They're not cutting corners. Same with the operations. So the one who takes care of that is the local or the boots on the ground. You need to have somebody who can get there in an hour or two and make sure that everything's going according to plan. And if you lined up all the people I've mentioned so far, the tenants would usually say, oh yeah, that's all the owners. But of course, it's not that simple. The banks are involved in everything. The fund managers, all these different lenders are all the financiers. And one thing that they're going to want to know that I haven't mentioned yet, and it might be a surprise for newbies, they're going to be asking, but who's your KP? Who's your sponsor? And what that's all about is if you want to be eligible for the loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset. So even if you're loaded like Elon Musk, if you want to get a loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset. You also need to have a certain amount of liquidity, and then you also have to have a balance sheet of at least the amount of the loan. But if you got all of those pieces, you've got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Kathy, on that die, what are your core competencies that you're most likely to contribute to your next deal?
Yeah, great question. So I do have quite a number of apartments under my belt. So from a KP sponsor perspective, definitely can bring there. Being local to Phoenix and focusing on this metro, I'm boots on the ground as well, and I love actually going out there. Um, I'm very much hands-on with the day-to-day operations of each of the apartments that I own. And so, but to the extent that you were talking about, I'm not the only one that is running the operations. A key partner that we have is our property manager. So I work hand in hand really closely with our property management out here. CalCap is their name. And for me, they're just absolutely key for us to have streamlined operations. They're fantastic. And we have weekly calls to just touch base, make sure things are running smoothly, make the decisions that we need to make, and so forth. And they do help us manage our contractors as well. And so, as we go in, the two big leverages we do is optimize operations as well as increase the value of the apartment through value add. So, things like we are adding washers and dryers because one of our apartments is mainly just families. And as you can imagine, washers and dryers in units are really important for them. And we want to make sure that we're able to provide that for them. And so as the units turn, we're adding in washer and dryer connections where we can.
Beautiful. And so
Yeah.
you were mentioning about the third party operator. So that gives some hints to my next part, which is the ideal property. Now, when commercial real estate investors talk to each other, maybe they'll talk about their buy box or their ideal property, basically the one that's easier to say yes to and it's more difficult to say no to. But here's what they're really asking for. Three main things. First one is geography. Where is it? Okay. What state, what county, what neighborhood, that sort of thing. Some investors are more specific than others, but that's the geography piece. The second one is the unit count. And I was mentioning that a second ago because Kathy was saying that she outsources the operations, at least in some properties. And so that means you're probably looking at a higher unit count. And every commercial property except for industrial, possibly warehousing, they use unit count as the way to measure how big the place is. But the third thing that we're looking for is the class, okay? And unfortunately, they use the same word for two different things, which is something that I don't like. But the first meaning of the word class, it's the condition of the actual building, whereas the other meaning of class is the area that it's in. So like how's the crime rate? How close are some good schools? Those sorts of things. And both of those definitions of class are measured the same way. It's just like in grade school where you have like B minus, B plus, A minus, all that sort of stuff. So as far as ideal properties go, Kathy, what are you really looking for as far as if somebody has it, they should come talking to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I am local to here, and because Phoenix is the highest rent growth in the nation, my absolute focus right now is the Phoenix, Arizona metro. In terms of unit count, I have been operating between the 50 and 100 units count, but am looking for closer to the 100 units going further. And class, I do love the Class B, Class C properties. But to your point, where there's a distinction between the condition of the building as well as the area, I do like it when the area is actually a higher class level than the building itself. So I don't mind being the ugly building on the block because I like value add. I like to roll up my sleeves and try to increase the value of the building itself. So oftentimes, if I do get a Class C, I'll try to move it up to Class B and so forth. And as long as the neighborhood is in a nicer class, then it's fair play, and it's a really great concept for me to be able to just spruce up the community with our apartment.
Awesome, awesome. So that's the kind of deal you're interested in. The next thing that I
Mhm.
want to ask has to do with the fact that all commercial real estate investors, none of us, especially once you get to bigger deals, none of us are going to be all the sides of the die. We need to have a team. We need to have people taking up different roles. And another consequence of that is we're better suited to help some people than others. Me personally, my background is in marketing and scaling things digitally. So that means you have to have something going before I can be the most help. So I'm always looking for sponsors and KPs because that's the best fit for me. Now, but Kathy, without breaking any SEC restrictions, so if you're doing a 506B raise, do not entice investors if you have 506C or if you have a crowd fund or your own fund or something like that that's accredited, then you can go ahead and do what you want. But who in commercial real estate are you better suited to help than anybody else?
The people that are in the part of the acquisitions piece. So for me, I tend to be playing more in the asset management, and raising has not been a problem for me. I think the people that are able to identify properties but need help with just the day to day, or need help to, find people to commit to it, that's easily some more that I can bring value to.
All right, beautiful. So we've got that, and the only thing left then is we ended up meeting each other through LinkedIn. I believe it was
Ah.
through Yona's challenge. But is LinkedIn the best way to reach you? You've got your website and branding in the background. Is that better? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, all of the above. LinkedIn, absolutely. I'll be responding, within the day. Diamondpointhomes.com is my company website, and you certainly can reach me there as well. And all of my socials will be posted there as well.
All right, awesome. And I only have one other thing, which is actually for you in the audience, which is if you look under my left hand, you'll notice if it's on a phone, you'll like these red, angry looking words. And if you're on a desktop, it's an even angrier looking button. It's red and it's okay. And we need to get rid of that awful button. Fortunately, all you have to do is you click on the button and then it turns gray. I have no problem with the gray button because it has a magical power. What magical power? Well, it makes YouTube pay for these videos instead of me. That sounds like magic, and it doesn't even cost you anything. It doesn't ask for your email address or any of that silliness. All it really does is it means that my videos might show up on your list of suggestions, but there's no guarantee of that. And if you don't even use YouTube, doesn't even matter. You don't even have to watch them. Clicking on the thing has done me an enormous favor. Just like Kathy, you've done me an enormous favor by joining me today. This has been great to meet you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Sweet. Thanks. Hey, thanks for watching today. I want to say a quick word about 506B Me. You may know that these interviews are how I document my investor relationships for 506B compliance. Basically, you need to know the person that you're working with enough that you know their level of sophistication at the very, very minimum. And that's exactly what we're doing. If you're a commercial investor and if you've ever put any thought into what would happen if somebody says they were publicly solicited and you don't have the proper documentation, maybe it's something you didn't think of. I'm the kind of person who does think of that because I used to work for a CRM company. So I was sitting there saying, okay, well, how do you tag people? What kind of forms do you write? What kind of things do you make them accept? And then what do you end up showing people? Sure, it's in the old noodle, but really what you need is a third-party verification service. But the problem is, who can you trust with your list? That's something that I know from working for web.com back in the day. But anyway, I set up 506BME so that if you're at a live event, you just pull out your phone, it's got the QR code, they pull out their phone, they scan it, boom, and you're added to their watch list. So that when they get back to the hotel room or they get back home, they know everybody who they have to check out in these little punchy 15-minute interviews. Anyway, if you are a commercial investor or even if you're thinking about it, do 506B Me after this.